I am the baby boomer. And so I'm gonna bring up some ancient history. Everybody here, well, almost everybody here knows about the case of Luis Lopez and Tyrone Bartley, and that's not to cut them short shrift, but I also want you to understand the history of Central Florida is a hotbed of police, we'll call it misconduct, of police crimes. And I think one of the things that Cassia mentioned and that Edmund also talked about, I think we need to also understand that police hold a very unique role in American society. They are the only people that exist in our society who have the power to summarily execute somebody on the street, no due process. They can also take away your freedom, at the very least temporarily, to arrest you and take you down to the police station or jail, if not, to get you sent to prison by lying about what it was that they claimed that you did. So that's why community control and accountability and mentioned about the rights are so important. I would wager, and my background is, I spent 30 years in newspaper journalism, and I did a lot of writing about police and criminal justice system. I would wager that 30% of people who are in prison today are actually innocent. They're there based on lies that the cops told, that people, they didn't have adequate representation, they couldn't really express themselves. And I think that's why we need to be very concerned about this. So I'm going to take you in the Wayback Machine a little bit. So I'm going to mention, because when I do this, I have a daughter who's 35 years old, and I mention like a year, and she's like, I mentioned she was born in 1998. I mentioned anything before that, she's like, I have no concept of you know what you're talking about. But this is Central Florida history that I think you need to know. How many people here have ever heard the name Willis McCall? Nobody. Okay, great. So Willis McCall, so I want you to write this name down. Willis McCall, back in the late 1940s, was the sheriff of Lake County. And Willis McCall, the closest example I can think of that some of you people may be familiar with is Wayne Ivey, who's a sheriff in Brevard County. So they're both cut from the same bolt of cloth. Wayne Ivey, for people who don't know, he's the one who was recently quoted in the national press saying that he was going to shoot protesters graveyard dead. So that's, understand the mindset. Willis McCall is up in Lake County. This is the center here in Central Florida at that time of the citrus industry. Willis McCall was many things, including being a strike breaker, a union breaker, because at that time they wanted to get everybody they could possibly get out in the groves picking citrus. A lot of people came home from the war and didn't want to do that kind of work anymore. They started having labor organizers come into the area to try and get the farm workers organized, and they were routinely beaten up, chased out of town, jailed on phony charges and stuff like that. But Willis McCall's greatest claim to fame was the Groveland 4 case. So Groveland 4 case, here's another piece of homework for you, write down this title of a book called Devil in the Grove, and it tells the full story of Willis McCall. So it's one of these kind of stories that you have from the 1940s in the Deep South, that there was some woman who claimed that she was raped. Nothing gets white people more animated than hearing a white woman was raped by some black guys. So Willis McCall goes out to round up the usual suspects. Among the suspects were two black guys who came back from the military and didn't want to work in the groves. He snatched them up. He snatched some guy at a train station, snatched up somebody walking through the street. And most of these people never even met each other before. And they claimed that they were guilty of this crime. And they taught the woman into identifying them. So anyhow, they get to the point that they're going to have a trial. And people, in fact, at the time when this happened, people got so worked up. This is 1949, up in Lake County. And everybody knows Lake County is just north of us, just north of Orange County. That they actually went through Groveland and burned out the black neighborhoods in Groveland and chased black people out and stuff like that. So anyhow, they took these two black guys they held them, instead of holding them in Lake County, they sent them to Rayford, Florida State Prison. So Willis McCall, the actual sheriff, is now going to be bringing them back to Tavares for trial. And in his car on the way back, he supposedly had a blowout. So he goes to fix the tire, and he claimed that the two black inmates jumped him and tried to kill him, at which point he shot both of them. He thought they were both dead, but when more people responded to the scene, turns out one of the guys is alive. and he told people what they did, what Willis McCall did. It turned this whole big thing of what Willis McCall did and what these guys did or didn't do. It was just, but Willis McCall was such a scary person. They believe Willis McCall probably personally killed at least a dozen people himself. He was so scary that black parents in Central Florida, they tell a scary story to keep their kids from breaking the law and stuff like that. Willis McCall would be like the boogeyman. So, well, if Willis McCall will get you, and it's not going to be too good. So people were really scared of Willis McCall. Willis McCall finally was removed from office in 1974 for, I think he stomped to death a black guy in a chain gang. So this is the kind of piece of work this guy. So this is, even for me, this is ancient history. I wasn't alive when most of this stuff happened, but that's kind of like the mindset. And there were many sheriffs like that throughout Florida. Dave Starr, who was a sheriff here in Orange County, you'll hear people go, oh, Sheriff Dave Starr, he brought innovations to the sheriff's office and modern policing. Dave Starr is a member of the Ku Klux Klan. The Orlando Sentinel wrote a story about, they got their hands on some FBI records. They found that Dave Starr is a member of the Ku Klux Klan group, has put a bomb under the house of Harry and Harriet Moore over in Mims, Florida, and blew them up on Christmas night. Dave Starr, the sheriff, was a member of that. And I say he put the bomb there, but he was a member of the group that was responsible for that bomb. So I just want to kind of give you a sense of, this isn't new stuff we're talking about. There's always been this kind of thing going on here. I came to Florida in 1984. I was like the first black, when I say editor, there are many editors in newspaper. I was editing what they call the Little Sentinels. So we were basically covering the small cities in Orange County. And I was warned, I said, when you're out trying to explore and stuff like that, two things. Don't go to Lake County, because there's still a lot of Willis McCall stuff going on. And I said, and at night, it's to be like really careful if you're going through Ocoee, because you really don't want to let the sun down catch you. And I'm originally from New York City, so I wasn't really familiar with sundown towns, but they also had a similar type situation there, where all the black people, there were no black people living in the city of Ocoee until about 1989. Okay, so I just want to kind of put that in perspective. In 1986, when I was working on the city desk, there was a young man by the name of Keith Rozier. He's 21 years old. He lived in the Palms apartment. The Palms apartment's over on Mercy Drive, just off West Colonial. Some people he knew lied on him and said that he robbed some people. And the OPD, Orlando Police, went to his apartment. A couple of officers. They knock on the door, come out. He sees those cops. What's going on? They said, well, you robbed somebody. So he gets really scared, and he breaks away from them, and he starts running. One of the cops, I still remember his name to this day, Kurt Myrie, shot him in the back with a shotgun and killed him. A little while later, they found out that this guy didn't rob anybody. The people just made up the story. He said, well, he was a fleeing felon, and the law allows you to shoot a fleeing felon in the back. And there was a big uproar at that time. All kinds of meetings and stuff like that. They actually had, that's why I mentioned with a couple of our cases, they had what they called a coroner's inquest, which is a little bit different from a grand jury, to try to review the case and see if there's any criminality. The end result is that he was not charged with anything. And in fact, I saw his name not too long ago. He just retired from OPD about 4 years ago, Kurt Myrie. So that's 1986. When I mentioned 1986, my daughter was born in 1988. She was like, what are you talking about, David? So, but coming up to more recently, in 2013, there was a young man by the name of Carves Gamble, and he was, at that time, he was 19 years old, and he was in there was a little church in a house that was just off the corner of the trail in Colonial, so on Arlington Street. They had church, like in the house is kind of hollowed up, and they had church in there. They were preparing for a church service. I think it's like a Tuesday night. OPD cops, 8 cops, come to the house. They said they came there to do what they call a knock and talk. So a knock and talk is when we don't really have any probable cause to actually be able to search the house. We're going to knock on the door and ask you if you let us search the house. And I hope everybody here knows the answer to that is
no.
So anyway, they kind of surround the house. One of the cops supposedly looks through a window, and he says he sees Carves reaching for a gun under a pillow. And you'll recognize this before. So they fire from outside the house into the house and mortally wound him. And they take about 20 minutes before they actually get around to calling an ambulance. Carvis died. And the heartbreak is that his mom had been at the church earlier, and she was coming back with another kid for this church service, and she comes back to all of this. So that's in 2013. In 2020, and before when you were going through, Cassie was going through that timeline, there's so much stuff that happened in 2020. In 2020, there was a young man by the name of Salavius Melvin, a 2-year-old black male. He was riding with some friends. There's a lot of a backstory to kind of go through, but he's riding with some friends. They went to Florida Mall. They did not know they were being followed by Orange County Deputy Sheriffs from the Fugitive Squad. Because a friend that he was with was somebody who deputies wanted to arrest. The weird thing about this whole case is that the deputies actually had this guy in custody and let him go a week earlier. So they had a lot of time to have arrested him. They followed him for about 6 hours a day. They go to Florida Mall. They're walking out of Dick's Sports when all of a sudden they jump out to make the arrest. So Salavius is going like, what the hell? So all of a sudden these cops start jumping out. He starts running across the mall parking lot. One of the cops drops to his knee and pegs 3 shots at him and shoots him in the back. And in that video, I've got it someplace. I mean, it's pretty miserable to see him die. And see, when you always hear the cops talking about, oh, we tried to render first aid. So he's gurgling, he's bleeding out, and they're doing chest compressions on him. No, you need to stop the bleeding. That's what you need to do. Anyhow, he died. And nothing came of that case. But the funny thing, it's not really funny, but happened 2 years later, the cop who shot him, a cop by the name of James Montiel, he was arrested for kiddie porn. And then he was arrested a short time after that for basically using police information to spy on the cops who were investigating him on the kiddie porn charge.
Wow.
So not a good person. And then we come to, this is a case in Brevard County, two black teenagers, A.J. Crooms and Sincere Pierce. They were in Cocoa, and they were shot to death by a deputy who tried to stop them because he said the car that they were in matched the description of a vehicle involved in armed robbery. Turns out, wrong car, wrong description. So this is another really sad case. In a couple of cases, I've met the mothers, and they tell the story. It is heartbreaking. So they come to the 2 kids in the car. They come to this one kid's house, A.J. Croom's house. His mother sees them go out of the house and get in the car. So they start driving down the street. As they go down the street, lo and behold, she sees a marked police car going right behind them. So she's like, oh my God, what's going on? Remember, her son just got in the car. So she jumps in her car to follow them down the street. They get to a cul-de-sac to turn around. The cop jumps out. He says he ordered them to stop. They didn't stop. He said he thought they were going to run over him, so he opened fire and he killed the 2 teenagers. And so that one, naturally, Wayne Ivey defended them and everything like that. And that cop also is not charged. And then a year later, he was found dead in the bathroom of his house in St. Cloud, Florida. So, once again, karma. And then finally, there's a case of Derek Diaz, and I've heard a couple of you all mention him. So Derek Diaz is a 26-year-old young man. He was sitting in his car in downtown Orlando, I think it was on a Saturday night, and some bike cops rode up. I guess their story was they suspected he might have been selling some drugs sitting in his car on Saturday night. So they go up and tap on his window, and he's like, what? Oh, they said, roll the window down. So he starts to roll the window down, and then they said, turn your engine off. He turns the engine off, and then they said, one said he think he was reaching for something. And the old thought he was reaching for something. They shot and killed him. And he died. So I'm just giving these cases. These are just very high level. I mean, there are many more cases than these. But also understand, beyond all this, the institution of policing, they're always held up as being so perfect and stuff like that. In the past 6 months, we have seen the police chief of Kissimmee, largest city in Osceola County, just south of us, the police chief, her command staff, and several other cops get fired, forced to retire, busted down rank because they were lying about a use of force case in which a cop brutalized somebody. Then we also have the high sheriff of Osceola County, who has been removed from office for all things, I don't even know how a sheriff would do this, was running a gambling ring, was running a casino. I mean, an actual casino on 192 that actually had its own Instagram page showing all the slot machines and everything. So, you know, so again, when you hear people talk about how great cops are and how they're upholders of everything, understand I have a page, a Facebook page, it's called Cop Watch Florida. And people routinely send me stuff about stuff happening all over the country, and it is frightening when you see some of the things. Police are just like us, and when you also see a lot of police, if they weren't wearing a badge, they would be out sticking people up, selling drugs and everything, because they do all that right now, wearing a badge. So they are not perfect, and I think it's really important that we continue doing what we're doing to not just have accountability and community control. And community control means we should be able to say how we want to be policed. I mean, there are communities in which the people, whatever, they've made a choice that's saying, you know what, we don't want police stopping people for minor traffic violations because stats show that most of like the really bad things happen at car stops. So some minor stupid stuff, like this guy, and I still don't understand a case in Jacksonville where he didn't have his lights on but it wasn't raining. If you even want to stop somebody, okay, so stop them and say, hey, you know what, sir? I give you a ticket for that, but I don't want to do that. Just, you know, you need to have your lights on. Have a great day. Could have just done that. Instead, we go through all this other stuff, and that's not the way we want to be police. I hate when you hear these stories where police say, you didn't follow our commands. Well, you know what? I'm off the plantation, I'm not in the Army. So you don't command me. You made a request or something like that, and then you also see in some of these cases the cops have an inability or refuse to listen to what people are trying to say to them. You just listen to what they're saying for a second, but maybe have a calm discussion. And you see so many things when the cops talking to people that they just love to use the F-bomb. And I use the F-bomb a lot too, but in that high stress situation, using the F-bomb is not de-escalation. That doesn't make me feel more relaxed. It makes me get like I need to fight, run, whatever. Police also fail to understand why people, especially black people, why they may run from you or fear you, because we have actually seen what you do. Anytime a black person gets stopped by police, maybe it's the same for everybody, but certainly every time a black person gets stopped by police, you are within 30 seconds of dying. There was a case in Minnesota, not far from Minneapolis, of Philando Castile. Philando Castile was actually, he worked in a school. He gets stopped in his car over some traffic violation. And he tells the cop, he says, you know, officer, and he's being very respectful and stuff like that, so I just want to make you aware that I have a concealed weapons permit and I'm carrying a gun. And the cop basically shoots him to death. Somebody has a concealed weapons permit, which I have. That basically means they don't have a criminal record. You can't get one if you have a criminal record. So the cop should actually be more at ease. You're hearing it. He fired something like 6 shots into the car with Philando Castile sitting here, his girlfriend sitting there, and the girlfriend's daughter in the back seat. I don't know how he didn't kill all of them by doing that. That was just reckless policing. If you guys are so scared, then maybe you want to get a job working for a drunken monkey. If engaging with people on the street, you can't. If you're that scared, you're wearing body armor, you have a pistol, you have a shotgun, you probably have an AR-15 in your car. What are you scared of? They say, well, we want to go home at the end of the night. Well, guess what? So do we.